Danish Institute of Parties and Democracy delivered his speech.
Thank you very much and good morning to all of you. Let me first thank the Honourable Chair of the Parliamentary Committee for hosting this very important conference the next 2 days with the participation of both people from the region and also from Denmark. Let me also recognize the presence of honorable ministers and parliamentarians, present ones, past ones, and future ones. I'm sure many in here will be future ones, and the logic of politics is that some of you will one day be past ones, I guess. Also, distinguished representatives from the political parties, representatives from international organizations and bilateral donors, jump ups, not least, dear friends. I started my professional career in the world of development cooperation in 1974. It's about 42 years ago. That same year, on 25 April 1974, a group of military officers in Portugal decided to bring the dictatorship of their country to an end. They staged the coup in the name of democracy, removed the dictator, then they negotiated a new constitution, elections were held, and a democratically electoral government was in place 2 years later, in April 1976, 40 years ago. That was the start of what we today call the third wave of democracy globally. At that time, we knew of only 40 real democracies in the world. But now, as Mahatma Gandhi once said, the spirit of democracy had been let out of the bottle, and it could not, whatever authoritarian regimes around the world thought was possible, force the spirit back into the bottle. It spread. It first spread to Latin America, then to Asia, then back to Europe when the wall fell, and from there it spread into Africa when Nelson Mandela was relieved and created a new South Africa. This was the most massive governance transformation in history. Around 90 new democracies were born after 1974 and until today. In most of them, the role of women in parties and in politics was an element, never the key ingredient to start with, but millions of women in civil society and political parties around the world came to the call, started moving, started empowering, making sure that women would take their rightful place in the new democracies, arguing that we cannot have real or full democracies without the involvement of women. Also recognized by the International Conference for Women in 1975. Women in politics is still something we need to struggle to keep on the agenda. Just like we continuously need to struggle to keep democracy as such on the agenda. I started as the first director of DIPD in the days around 25 January 2011, when people, thousands of them, mostly young people, many young women, gathered on Tahrir Square in Cairo, Egypt, and brought down the military dictatorship of Mubarak. Could this be the start of the fourth wave of democracy, many of us thought? The answer was no. That's not the way it turned out. 2 years later, the generals were back, more secure in their seats than they had ever been before. And today, as we speak, we see political parties and civil society organizations struggle in Egypt, not least women risking anywhere from 25 years to life in prison to fight for the ideals that we are gathering here over the next 2 days to protect and nurture. This is not always a struggle which is confined to the nice room of a conference hall. This also happens in the street, and it has a cost which can be enormously high. Is democracy globally in decline? You would think so if you go on Google and Google democracy in decline. Someone did that on 18 August 2014, and a search gave 55.5 million results of writings about democracy in decline. But I agree with those who argue that what we see right now is not decline as such, but it is a gap between what is perceived or promised to be delivered by democracy and what is in fact actually being delivered by democracies many places in the world. Democracy is an ideal which is still shared by the large majority of people all over the world, irrespective of color, of religion, and whatever, including the right of women to participate equally and fully in the political affairs of our societies. There's great support among people around the world for that. In a sense, you could argue that we are riding on the downward side of the third wave of democracy. This is somewhat depressing at times, and in some cases, it can be dangerous. As a global community, we need to come together and find answers to make the gap between what we have promised and what we deliver smaller for people to trust. Trust us whether we are politicians, trust us whether we are civil society engaging. And there is no room for complacency. We cannot just sit and wait for a miracle. An academic has expressed it better than I can, and I quote, "Today, as always, democracy is a fragile flower. It requires constant support, constant tending, and the plucking of weeds and fencing off of the jungle that threaten it, both from within and from without. In the absence of such efforts, the jungle and the weeds may sooner or later come back to reclaim the land. It's been given to us. It's our duty and our right to protect it, to enforce it, to deepen it. These 2 days, we are, in a sense, supporting and tending the role of women in politics as an important part of our democracy. And we are part of a global community dedicated to the ideals of the fragile flower of democracy. And thank you for coming here and being part of that. Thank you very much.